Greetings, Seekers. This is Black Pope Vice with another video. I have developed an interest in using runes and crystals and things like that, but the other prevalent and arguably much more popular concept is Orgonite. I've never really worked with Orgonite except for the beginning of my college, and for various reasons I didn't develop into that. And now when I look into retrospect, I feel my bad omen was actually a way to get me to develop the rune stones rather than focusing on the Orgonite. Because everyone's working on the Orgonite, I don't have to more or less figure out that tech tree. And when I did figure out that tech, it happened years later because of people who are much more advanced and knowledgeable and more experienced with it began doing things, and I pieced things together. So Orgonite what is it? Just from a conceptual idea, you take a resin matrix. So you make this this liquid that turns hard, and you put various things in it. You put crystals, you put metal shavings, and you seal it. And it comes in all varieties of shapes. Sometimes they're pyramids, but usually they kind of look like little hockey pucks. And they do a variety of things. You can change different types of the metal shavings or pieces in it, and the crystals with different things, and they produce different outcomes. But I, at one point, deduced that the Orgonite is a basic enchantment structure based off the principles of the four alchemic elements. I have an idea of what order they are, which associations they are, but maybe they can be changed a little bit. But the resin itself is the cup, it is the chalice, it is the water element. I believe the fire or the wands is kind of the energetic process, particularly the human energy that's activating it, because I think it's designed to suck in energy from humans, in a symbiotic fashion. The metal pieces are the earth element, and the crystals are the wind or intellect or sword element, because crystals, in my opinion, are a type of psychic proteins that are external from our body. Leia Wendell, peace be upon her, says the crystals were designed by the angels to replace lost psychic abilities of humans in past decline periods. And I think the idea that they're external psychic proteins really just meshes well with how people interact with them. So these Orgonite pieces, even though the shape might not be in a pentacle or discus shape, it's because it represents the cup, and it doesn't have to be a literal cup, but the cup is the form, it is the holding principle. They can come in a variety of shapes. These devices, Orgonite pieces, can be further streamlined with Bindrunes. So I came up with years ago a basic formula right here, this guy right here, to represent a transmutation equation. So Uruz and Hagalaz, this 6-point piece right here. This is an essential because it represents the beginning and the end of the equation. So the beginning, Uruz, Wunyu represents enchantment. These two Kenazes are the transmutation protocols. Here and here, you can have it one staffed, you can have it 3 staffed with an alehouse, or you can have it 5 staffed with an alternative Hagalaz. Hagalaz sometimes looks like a letter H, but the other form is this form. I'm familiar with K.H. Wells's views on the runes, and the six-pointed shape he says deals with the crystal, like a crystalline form, and he has a much bigger cosmology and explanation for why this is special. But I became familiar with this form first, and in retrospect, this becoming familiar with this form first has given me other insights into runology. So you can put either of these here to make more complicated equation elements. So I have some ideas about things we are going to be addressing. We're going to address Wi-Fi, cloud busting, 5G towers, and why not combine 5G to make it a cloud busting technique? Use already existing energy in the environment for other ends, like why two birds with one stone. So I have some ideas about coding protocols for what you're going to transmute into a desirable outcome. We're just going to go with the Wi-Fi first. Now, I have some ideas about how to code for this, like for instance with the 5G. Technically speaking, Manas Ansusjira describes 5G as like, an internet form because it is internet related. But at the same time, it's like if you do, an orgon technique that has this, for example, rather than these kinds of codes for damaging health, would the 5G thing be disabled? I don't know. I haven't really experimented with this, but these are my ideas based off my experience with coding for Fukarth. So, but you're probably going to be exposed to Wi-Fi and you still want it to be functional. So you might just want to have it limit its ability to interact negatively with your health. So so that's Manas Ansusjira, orange, blue, blue, orange Nodhouse, red Thurisols, red Urus. Now, I have down here a variety of concepts about Thurisols. A red one, a black one, and a mixed one. This would still be pronounced Thurisols, but it has the red Kenaz for hurt, and the black Iwaz is another kind of termination. So it's another way of saying harm, because I'm not sure exactly what kind of Thurisols you want to describe, but it describes hurt. And electrical energy that's dissipating in the environment is obviously yellow Fehu, and the red Urus is just human physiology. And black Nodhouse would be more restrictive in an entropic fashion rather than an orange Nodhouse, which is more restricting. It's very nuanced with the Nodhouses and the colors that you can use. So I just recommend, if you're going to experiment, and I'm going to say you probably want to experiment with this, do not experiment with trying the different Nodhouses. How I state the Nodhouses as they are is what you're going to want to use. Everything else, that's why I have multiple things going on, you're going to want to experiment with. But don't experiment with the different colored Nodhouses. This is definitely how it should work, or it should be designed. So, with Wi-Fi, or, the 5G towers, instead of having a three-pronged alehouse for coding, you can just have it the one-pronged, like the original situation, and use an octarine Ingwaz or Gabo. I use pink as my octarine. Octarine is the color of magic. It's kind of a subjective color, But I like to use pink because when I first read an essay on the colors of magic, they used kind of a pinkish color for Octarine, and I just didn't have any other kinds of paints. So I just went with, more of a magenta, pinkish color. And, you don't really have to worry about, like, well, what if it's a love color or whatever? Well, purple and green and blue are more appropriate for kind of love energy, particularly when you have to use different protocols with Fukarth. Like, for instance, a purple Gabo is definitely romantic. So an Octarine one would be associated with merging dimensions, and Ingwas is just more mana in the environment. So, utilizing, whether it be the Wi-Fi coding or a 5G, having it be just come out in Ingwas or Gabo is going to turn these, devices into mana generation or dimension altering or merging. One of the ideas about the 5G that I came up with is just simply making people energetically sensitive to how dangerous they are, because that's pretty funny. So what you do is it's Logisols, Fehu, Thurisols. So it's Lagus plus Thurisols. This is probably the first Bindrune I came up with, and this is just for awareness. So this is analysis, and this is kind of like a far scene. And when you do it together, it's a better code for scene. I have tested this a lot out, and this is very good for awareness. So don't question that color, just like the colors of the Nod House. So back to this. So ideally, we can either use Ingwas or Gabo for this, but I thought that for 5G towers, just making people just totally energetically sensitive around these things might be the best technique for addressing it if you just don't want to make a mana generation. Because maybe you don't want to have mana generation in certain areas, or dimension merging situations, because you don't want to terraform the environment in that way, because it's a bad environment, as in, like, there are bad guys there. You don't want to give them extra advantages, but, maybe around your local town, you might want to make your area more potent. So, cloud busting. So I've been experimenting, or I have different ideas, protocols right here relating to what's going on. This is for more weather manipulation, like the sky, rain, or the health of the sky, and this is just degrading. You can use one of these colors for Thurisols here, but I'm not quite sure what they're doing with the cloud covering and cloud busting, so I've decided that this is more neutral perspective on what they're trying to accomplish with geoengineering. This one is more of a functional, if negative, perspective, because they're having a restrictive barrier towards the sky, because that's functionally what they are doing. They have their own ideas of control, and I have an idea that this might be best. I went with the orange Nodhouse, blue Burkano, blue Tiawaz over the others, but experiment with them. And it to make healthy sunny sky, and this one is healthy sky rain. So that's like that. And I thought to myself, what if we combined the processes of, the harmful energy from 5G and just make it in the sunny sky? Like, why not kill two birds with one stone? So That is yellow Fehu, red Thurisols, red Urus, yellow Soliwo, blue Tiawaz. So yes, that is a yellow Soliwo. And last but not least, how do you carve? Because you're going to be carving and painting and perhaps using clear nail polish to seal the paint job, because you're going to leave these out in the environment for who knows how long and you don't want the paint to come off. How do you, when you carve and paint each symbol one at a time, Uruz, Hagalaz, Wunyo, Kenez, blank, Kenez, blank, Hagalaz. How are you going to want to, and you can kind of mish that up a little bit in terms of like when you're doing the paint job for creating this. It's going to be fine. You don't have to worry too much about the exact processes in sequential order of what you do. Usually I draw the Hagalaz first, and then I add the Urus, and then Wunyu, and then in this order. And then usually the last thing I do is finalizing the Hagalaz. So it's like the Urus in the beginning and the Hagalaz at the end. Because it's a sequentialness, though I don't think you have to be too worried about it. But I like to, be precise and methodical, and this is the best way I can do it with the current process. However, when you are carving individual rune stabs, like Uruz or Wunyo or Kenaz, you're going to follow this protocol. Fehu, Kenaz, and then what are you carving in? Wunyo Burkeno. I have discussed this elsewhere that, why this formula works. If you're a beginner, do not try to experiment. Because I always recommend, trying to come up with better techniques. But this is what I use all the time when I carve things. So Fehu, Kenez, blank, Wunyo, Burkeno. And those are both octarine. So, and here's just an example of, harmful into mana. And you can just do a gabo there. Like, if it was like that, it would look kind of like that. So, because sometimes you have to figure out, like, how are you going to have the Alehouse or the Hagalaz connect to the characters, because Manas has two pieces. In Yira, it's like, it's not even fully connected. Like, it looks like that, and it's smaller. It's supposed to be higher up, but, it's, don't worry too much. And same with Kenaz. Kenaz is also small. You see how it's up there? It's like, it's definitely not as big as these characters. So this is my thoughts on, let me get a full shot on some Bindrune 42s that relate to various objectives you can accomplish through Orgonite pieces to accomplish, addressment of 5G towers and cloud busting. We're Americans. We can just do things. What are they going to do to stop this from happening? But my thoughts on Orgonite pieces in assembly, I think interesting crystal types to be trying out for cloud manipulation, like making it rain, would be turquoise, citrine might be a good one for the sun and making it sunny. I do think salt, though with salt, like, salt crystals, you're going to want to include the normal metal shavings and crystals. Like, you're just not going to want to put resin in there with just salt in there. I feel like that's a waste of things. But I think salt would be an additional benefit to the metal and normal crystalline structure that's inserted in the Orgonite pieces to make it more cleansing or purifying, particularly if you want to make stuff banishing. Particularly, you want to make the sunshine instead of like trying to make it rain. And I don't have any ideas about how to make crystals aware, or people more aware of the energy from it. But I do think apatite would be another really useful crystal to put into Orgonite pieces. Apatite is the crystal that our bones are made out of. And I think this is a very potent source. Like, I think the reason why manifestation works as a technique for magic as opposed to prayer or other, magnetic or energetic forces, or traditionally called energetic fluid or magnetic fluid in our bodies, is that, there's actually 4 types of energy, or because that's just basic alchemic notions of, and numerology, particularly Hebrew Kabbalah numerology. I imagine air is our breath, and that's particularly prayer. Not quite sure on that, but it makes sense. But I'm for sure as I can be, apatite in our bones is the manifestation technique and source, rather than mental energy or whatever. And I think magnetic's in the blood, because it has the copper and iron in it, as opposed to electric fluid, which is our nervous system and mental energy. But apatite as a manifestation, and it has several mind-matter interactions, would be particularly useful to go into Orgonite pieces in addition to other types of crystals, because I think you can ideally do, apatite, citrine, and salt for turning the 5G into cloud busting. So those are my thoughts on Orgonite, why it works, Bindrune Form 42, and geoengineering and general terraforming of the environment, because we can just do things. So that's it. This is Black Pope Vice. Namaste, seekers.